Welcome back to the Great Man Podcast. My name is Maxim. I'm not joined by my father today, but with the events of the last year, a lot of people have thought about bad things happening. Maybe a zombie apocalypse or something like it. A end of the world event which changes everything. And you might have thought about the people that you would want to have with you so that you could survive. Now, you might want to pick a person like Jocko Willink, a Navy SEAL who could kill everyone he wanted to. I think that's a very good choice, but it's still not my number one pick. And the man I would want to have with me, the number one pick, would be a man named Dave Holladay. Now, this picture I put up on screen is a bit deceiving. The flower shirt and the hat is gonna completely throw you off. This is a man who I've personally met and done survival training with. And when I tell you that he could survive through anything, I mean it. So as a kid, Dave grew up in Guatemala with his dad, and at the time, the average man was making about 25 cents, not in 1 hour, but within 16 hours of work. And during this time, Dave was going through a whole Earth catalog when he found a book by Larry Dean Olson, and this book is Outdoor Survivor Skills. This book costs about $7.25, and Dave really wanted this book. But you can see why he would be hesitant to ask for it because of the fact that it was $7.25, or about that. But when he ended up going to his dad and asking, "Hey dad, can I have this book? It's $7.25. His dad said, "That would be a wise investment." This is the beginning of when he became an outdoor survival skill master, I would say. But another notable story about Dave is in 1983 when he was speaking to a man that also had some great survival skills, and he wanted to show him that he could make a hand drill fire, which a lot of you may think is an easy thing, but it's really not. It's actually very difficult to make, and it takes a lot of energy to make a fire just by drilling another piece of wood into a piece of wood and trying to create a spark. It's very difficult. But he wanted to show this man that he could do it. And he had a fireboard where he would start all these fires. He had made a hand drill fire 100 times before. But this one time where one of his friends and his wife wanted to watch him make this fire, he could not do it. It took hours and he got massive blisters on his hands, but he just couldn't do it. And by this time, it was getting close to 9:30, so the man and his wife said, "Okay, we believe you that you can make this fire, but we're gonna leave." And by this time, Dave was already getting used to living out in the wilderness. I mean, he would go to bed when the sun went down and got up when the sun rose. So, being around 9:30 at night was a very weird time for him to be awake. He would usually be asleep, and so would his son. And so when the man and his wife left, Dave threw the board out of frustration because, I mean, getting blisters on your hands, doing something that you've done a million times before, but couldn't do this one time when you actually wanted to show people that you could do it, is a very frustrating thing. So he threw the board out of frustration, and he went to bed. And in the morning, he woke up with his face in the sand, looking at the board, and he said, "I'm going to try one more time." And what'd you guess? The very first time he tries again, spark. So it's pretty early in the morning, probably about 4 or 5 in the morning. He wakes his son up, puts him on his shoulders, and then he takes a 3 to 4 mile walk to this guy's house to show, "Hey, I actually made the fire." And he did that. He walked 3 to 4 miles, showed up at the guy's house. The guy went out, and he goes, "Hold on, let me get some clothes on." And then Dave showed that he could do it. And a while later, when Dave was working with the Boulder Outdoor Survival School, the man that he showed that he could make the hand drill fire with gave him one of the best compliments of his life. And to summarize that compliment, it was basically saying that Dave would go far to keep his word, which that is a trait of a great man, to keep his word no matter how tough things get. And if you've walked 3 to 4 miles in any sort of land which is not maintained or does not have trails on it, then you'll know it's a very difficult thing, and this is in the desert as well. So, going that far in the morning after you wake up, after starting a fire, with your son on your shoulders, is not a very easy thing. But Dave still did it. Another interesting thing about Dave is that he's worked on many films such as Castaway, Survivor Man, Man vs. Wild, and he also taught Bear Grylls how to make a fire. And you might be wondering, well, how do I know this? It's because he told me that personally. I met him on Catalina Island where we did a 3-day survival training trip. And he told me and my father that he had taught Bear Grylls some of the skills that he knows, which is interesting to know because I grew up watching Bear Grylls a decent amount of the time. And I actually really liked Man vs. Wild and pretty much any show that Bear Grylls was on. So it was interesting to meet the man who had taught that man a lot of the skills he knows. Another trait about great men is that they are experts in many fields and that they can do things that most people can't. One of the things that Dave can do is make arrowheads and different art with rocks, which may sound easy, but it's not. Try going out and finding these sort of rocks or stones that you can make arrowheads out of, and try making one. It's difficult, and there's actually a technique to it. But now, Dave makes tons of them. He also makes rock pendants as well as paintings. He recently started painting maybe a couple years ago, but being able to actually paint something and do it well, if you've tried, you know it's very difficult. And I think to be a great man, part of it also has to do with being able to make art. And being able to make art of things that may seem simple, such as making arrowheads or stone pendants or paintings. And then you'll realize when you start to do it and actually get into it that it's a lot more difficult than it seems. But if you continue on, you can really master it as a skill. He also plays a lot of instruments, such as the piano, drums, and guitar. He teaches on native plants, ground stone tools, water procurement, desert navigation, desert food collection and preparation, shelter building, fire making, and so much more. Dave has been teaching this stuff for decades now, and it really shows that he's a master at it. But meeting this man personally changes a lot. If you meet any of these great people that we mention on this channel, at least the ones that are still alive, then it changes everything. You're not just reading about them or watching a video about them. You actually get to see what they can do. Now, I was about 11 or 12 when my dad and I went on a spring break trip to Catalina Island, which is just off the coast of California, and we went there with Dave to do this outdoor survival training trip. Now, it was probably about between a 9 and 11 mile walk in, maybe a little more, but it was only one day's walk down into where we were staying near the beach. Now you have to keep in mind that not only are there some uphills and downhills which are annoying, but it was also very hot. Now Dave was completely fine and he could walk forever, at least is what it seemed like, and he was completely fine. He did not complain once at all. But along the way, on the trail we were going through, he would point out these different flowers, he would point out mustard seeds or yams, and then he would dig it up and let us eat it. So it was just showing how these things that we were walking by, my dad and I were walking by, we had no idea what they were, but he had become so skilled in this area that he knew, oh, we can eat that. Now, one difficult thing about Catalina Island is that there's not a whole lot of food on that island. You can't fish, you can't find clams. I mean, we tried, but we couldn't do it. So pretty much all we ate off the island were plants. And we couldn't have done that without Dave. And I remember the times that we had to go and collect water. We had to walk maybe half a mile to a mile just to get some water. And even then, we couldn't carry that much back. And one key thing I remember is that at night, the waves and the wind would push water onto us. Not like a whole wave would crash onto us. We were on the beach, but it would just push sprinkles of water onto us with every wave, even though we were 20, 30 feet away from the shore. But we were still a good distance away, and we got really cold that night because of it. And we didn't really have a good shelter, and if I remember correctly, there wasn't much wood around to build anything anyway. So it was pretty much just us with a tarp and our sleeping bags. And all Dave had was 2 blankets. 2 small blankets. In fact, he gave me one, which I can show you now. So this is what it was. It's not a very big blanket. Not at all. But he just had 2 of them, and that was it. And the main thing I remember is that at night, when it was not only cold, but we would get wet, Dave would keep the fire going all night. All night. And I remember sitting up with him at night at around probably like 3 or 4 in the morning when I couldn't sleep and I was pretty cold, and he was just sitting there keeping the fire going. And this is important because it shows his dedication to doing what is necessary. Now you might think, well, you were just on an island, a couple miles walk from civilization, so you were fine. But keeping the fire going also meant that, well, if we didn't, we could have gotten hypothermia, not only from the water, but the cold wind. And he decided to keep it going, and he knew that was the best thing to do. Now, maybe it was that he couldn't sleep or something like that, but I doubt it. I think Dave is a very respectable and great man that knows what he's doing and has perfected his craft. I don't think he would say he has perfected his craft, which is also a trait of a great man. A great man knows that things never really end and you can always get better. 2 other things about that trip were that my dad and I were fairly hungry, and so we ended up killing a lizard and cooking it, and Dave showed us how to cook that lizard, just on a soapstone right next to the fire. And it was probably the best thing I had eaten in a while. And even though it was just, I think, 2 days in, I was still very hungry, and it also helped remind me how nice it is to have food, which I think is something we should all help remind ourselves every once in a while. That the basic things we have, such as a great shelter, seemingly endless amounts of food and water, are things that we wouldn't normally have. But on that trip, we decided to go home early, just about 1 day early. So as we were going back, we found a freshly dead rattlesnake on the side of a road that we were heading up. And so we stopped, and Dave skinned it. He had me hold the head as he skinned it, cut off the head as well. And when we got close to the town that we started off in, which was very, very small, we cooked the rattlesnake, and it was actually very good. It tasted like chicken, actually. But when we went down to the town, which was probably 8 miles walk from where we started, or from where we were camping, I got a ton of food because I was very hungry. So I got like 2 sandwiches, I got some bars, and a ton of other things. And when I went to offer Dave some of this food, he was like, oh, I'm fine. And I just thought that was surprising to me at the time because I was starving, my dad was hungry, but Dave is completely fine. And I don't think he ate any of the rattlesnake either, even though it was fairly good for not eating for a little while. But I just thought that was very interesting at the time, especially since I was probably 11 or 12 years old. But anyway, Dave Holladay is a great man, truly a great man, a very humble, kind, and skillful man. A man that I would recommend you try to meet either through Boulder Outdoor Survival School or California Survival School. Either one of those. I'm not sure exactly which one he works with the most, or if he does still work with them. I believe he still works with California Survival School. But if you can find him, I would definitely go. Bring your son to one of these events, and maybe stay out in the wild for a couple days. Go to Dave to learn something new, because this is a man you can learn a lot from. But thank you guys so much for watching. I'll put the Boulder Outdoor Survival School website in the description, as well as the California Survival School website in the description as well. I hope you guys check Dave out, because he is truly a great man, and a man worth mentioning, a man that should be remembered. But I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys next time.